If you had the job back then in 1994 to turn this into this without using this or any other 3D references for that matter, that would be a really challenging task, wouldn't it? But that's exactly the same task that the brilliant minds at Nintendo once found themselves in, and how they succeeded was a story that still impacts gaming today. Video games have changed a lot ever since they were first introduced, and this is no exception for when it comes to graphics. Today, we'll take a look into Nintendo's Super Mario series and how that game transitioned from 2D into 3D gaming from an artistic perspective. Mario's first major home console appearance was Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System. The 1980s were considered Mario's 8-bit era, but what exactly does this mean? First off, a bit is a binary digit used in computing, and 8-bit systems process data in groups of 8 bits at a time. Because of hardware limitations, the NES could only use a very small color palette for each sprite. This caused sprite artists to work around these hardware limitations and try to create colorful pieces using a limited palette. Because of this, much pixel art at the time was either very simple or confusing. Some sprites were very bland, like the background of 1-1, meanwhile some sprites made no sense, like these weird enemies in Zelda. It's very interesting to see how game developers of this time worked around these visual limitations, but it's also very clear that there was major room for improvement in terms of hardware. Also, just quick shout out to games like Super Mario Bros. 3 and Mega Man 5 that they took the NES's hardware and they ran with it to the max. They were able to create really beautiful stuff on there using that really old hardware. And I also really appreciate games that use the 8-bit style to this day. My favorite definitely has to be Shovel Knight because of just how Shovel Knight looks. It's really good, and I think Shovel Knight definitely used the 8-bits aesthetic to the maximum. It's really incredible. With competition on the horizon, Nintendo quickly revealed their Super Nintendo Entertainment System, this time having 16 bits instead of 8. People back then really cared about the bits of their consoles, where the more bits it had the better the console was, so it was like a huge marketing thing. By the early 1990s, the SNES pushed Mario into its 18-bit era. Super Mario World is a huge glow up when compared to Super Mario Bros. And even Super Mario Bros. 3. The sprites are much more detailed, everything is much more colorful, the environments actually feel like they're part of a larger area, and the overall animation is much smoother. This was all thanks to the SNES's powerful 16-bit hardware, allowing for better graphics and details to be shown at once. While Nintendo has released 32-bit consoles before, those have stuck with either old handhelds or failed marketing gimmicks. Instead, they decided to make the leap from 16-bit to 64-bit with their next console, the Nintendo 64. During the 1990s, many game companies were experimenting with 3D graphics, but Nintendo helped define how 3D platformers should control and feel when they released the N64, 64 for 64 bits. This major leap pushed Nintendo into 3D gaming, which changed the landscape of how games look forever. Super Mario 64 was Mario's first full 3D game, and while I could go on and on about how revolutionary this game was to 3D gaming as a whole, this game also did a lot in terms of easing people into the 3D era. Instead of focusing on flat pixels, Mario and his world were made of polygon models. The SNES had something similar to demonstrate the illusion of 3D on a 2D surface, but the N64 went even further beyond with this concept. There were many challenges that had to be tackled, such as creating Mario's model and having the player control said model in a way that does not feel awkward to use. Controlling Mario in a 3D environment and having to design levels around this new dimension served as a big challenge for game developers all across the world, but Nintendo seemed to be the first ones to do it right. The introduction of the Nintendo 64 alongside Super Mario 64 changed gaming forever, as it proved that gaming could exist in the third dimension. And looking back at it now, Mario has come a long way. From his 8-bit era on the NES to his 16-bit joy on the SNES, and finally his 3D 64 debut on the N64, Super Mario has made the jump from 8-bit to 3D in a way that only other gaming mascots could ever dream of.